family members are getting set to vote on a resolution tomorrow night that would close the Sullivan Arena as a homeless shelter at the end of the month. Lauren Maxwell tells us that's prompted new concerns from people in Fairview.
Well, Rebecca, many of them are fed up already about what they say is a rise in crime and other issues since the Sullivan converted to a homeless shelter. Now they're worried about what will happen when it closes.
At 3:47 a.m., Anchorage doesn't sound like a city. It sounds like a test. The street lights don't flicker the way they do in warmer places. They glow steady over snow that looks clean, almost peaceful. And the silence tricks you for a second until you notice the movement that most people never see. A figure steps out from behind a building, shoulders hunched, moving fast, not because they're doing something wrong, but because cold doesn't negotiate. The car is parked in a corner of a lot with the engine on. Inside, someone is wrapped in 2 jackets and a blanket that used to be part of a bed. They're not waiting for a ride. They're waiting for morning. And here's what makes Alaska different from almost every other homelessness story in America. In Alaska, outside isn't just uncomfortable. Outside can kill. One bad night, one wrong layer, one moment of exhaustion, one decision to fall asleep before finding a safer spot. And when the snow melts, sometimes the story ends the way nobody wants to imagine. Not with a headline, not with a memorial, just silence. Welcome to U.S. Homeless Secrets. On this channel, we document what's real, plainly, respectfully, and safely. We avoid graphic imagery. We don't harass anyone. We don't encourage conflict. We don't treat human suffering like entertainment. We focus on public reality, public safety, and solutions that protect dignity. Tonight's episode, Alaska Homeless Crisis 2025, Anchorage winter, native communities, and thousands with nowhere to go. And the question driving everything you're about to hear is simple. How does a place as vast, as resource-rich, and as proud as Alaska allow people to face sub-zero nights without a guaranteed door to walk through? If you stay with this story until the end, you'll see something uncomfortable but important. In Alaska, homelessness isn't just a housing issue. It's a survival issue. And how a community responds, whether it opens doors or closes them, becomes a direct measure of what that community believes a human life is worth. This is U.S. Homeless Secrets. Let's begin where the story always starts, on paper, because what looks like just numbers becomes life or death when the temperature drops. Part 1, Alaska 2025, Numbers That Don't Sleep. The easiest way to misunderstand homelessness is to treat it like a statistic, a count, a rate, a problem that belongs to a spreadsheet. But in Alaska, every number has weight, because in winter, numbers turn into bodies. Here's the official foundation most public planning begins with, the point-in-time count. In Alaska's statewide point-in-time count, 2,686 people were counted experiencing homelessness in 2024, 1,372 unsheltered, and 1,314 sheltered. That's the official snapshot. But here's the first truth you need to understand. A point-in-time count is a photo. Real life is a movie. The count can't fully capture the people doubled up on someone's couch, rotating between relatives, sleeping in a car and moving before sunrise, or staying in a place that's unsafe just to avoid freezing. Even in the lower 48, those hidden situations matter. In Alaska, they matter even more, because the margin for error is thinner. Now zoom into Anchorage, because Anchorage is where pressure concentrates. In earlier reporting, the Associated Press described an estimate of about 3,150 people experiencing homelessness in Anchorage at that time, alongside severe shelter capacity constraints. You'll hear different numbers depending on the method, the month, and the agency. That's not confusion. That's what happens when you measure a moving target. But what doesn't change is the shape of the crisis. Shelter demand rises in winter. Outdoor survival becomes harder. The city's emergency systems absorb the impact. And the people at the bottom of the ladder pay the price first. The municipality of Anchorage documented that in the January 27, 2025 point-in-time count, 402 people were counted unsheltered in Anchorage. That's a number you can read in one breath. But think about what it means in Alaska. That's not 402 people caught in a rainstorm. That's 402 people exposed to a winter that can cause frostbite, hypothermia, infection, and medical emergencies that spiral fast. And that same municipal document points to another detail that should make anyone sit up straighter. By June 30th, 2025, Anchorage described about 600 people unsheltered. So even outside the coldest months, the system was still carrying a heavy load, one that doesn't vanish when the calendar changes. If you're wondering how this can happen in a city that isn't huge by US standards, here's the blunt answer. When homelessness rises and capacity doesn't rise with it, the solution becomes whatever space is left. Sometimes that space is a mat, sometimes it's a chair, sometimes it's a car, and sometimes it's nothing but snow and darkness. This is why Alaska is a warning flare for the rest of the country. Because if a place where winter can be lethal still can't guarantee enough indoor options, then what does that say about our national ability to protect people when the system is strained? Now let's leave the numbers and step into the night, where capacity becomes a door that may or may not open. Part 2, Anchorage Winter, when a chair becomes shelter. In a typical American city, people argue about whether a shelter bed is enough. In Anchorage Winter, the argument shifts. Because sometimes the question isn't, do you have a bed? It's, do you have a place to be indoors at all? The municipality of Anchorage described using overnight shelter lobbies, where people could stay indoors when full bed space wasn't available. Think about how extreme that is. A lobby is not designed for sleep. It's not designed for privacy. It's not designed for recovery. But it is designed for one thing that can mean the difference between life and death in Alaska: being inside. When the wind hits, the human body becomes a math equation. Heat loss, exposure time, wet clothing, exhaustion, calories, hydration. And if you're older, injured, sick, or worn down, the equation becomes crueler. Cold doesn't care if you're a good person. Cold doesn't care if you used to have a job, a lease, a family, a plan. It only cares whether you can maintain core temperature long enough to make it to morning. In public reporting, Anchorage has faced tragic outdoor deaths among people experiencing homelessness, underscoring the stakes of exposure. This is why, in Alaska, winter response isn't only about comfort. It's about preventing fatalities. But when the system is tight, the city gets forced into impossible trade-offs. Do you open more indoor space without enough staff? Do you loosen rules to keep more people alive, even if the environment becomes harder to manage? Do you prioritize families, elders, and medically fragile people first, knowing others will remain outside? And then there's the question people ask in comment sections everywhere. Why don't they just go to a shelter? Here's the real answer, spoken in dozens of voices across cities and states, including Alaska. Shelter is not only a bed. Shelter can also mean being separated from a partner, not being able to bring a pet, fear of theft, crowding that triggers trauma, rules that are hard to meet when you're sick, untreated, or unstable, limited storage for belongings, meaning losing the last things you own. And in Anchorage, where winter gear is survival gear, losing belongings isn't a minor inconvenience. It can be dangerous, so you end up with a painful reality. Even when people want help, the type of help available may not match the needs they have in that moment. And when the help doesn't match, people choose the option that feels most controllable, even if it's riskier. A car where you can lock the door. A tent where you can stay near someone you trust. A spot you can return to without being told you're breaking a rule. This is not a defense of unsheltered living. It's an explanation of why just go to a shelter is often too simple for real life. Now let's talk about the next layer. What it takes to survive day to day in a place where stability is rare, and where a single mistake can erase your chance to climb back. Part 3, Survival Logistics, the invisible work of not freezing. Most people with housing don't realize how much life depends on small, boring things. An address, a bathroom, a place to store papers, a place to dry clothing, a place to rest without fear. When you lose housing, you don't just lose a roof. You lose infrastructure. And in Alaska, that loss hits harder because winter raises the cost of every mistake. Let's walk through a day in Anchorage for someone living unsheltered, without sensationalizing, without dehumanizing, just telling the truth. Morning starts with one question: where can I warm up? If you spent the night outside or in a vehicle, you're not waking up refreshed. You're waking up in survival mode. Your body is stiff. Your hands may be numb. Your sleep was shallow. Your mind has been alert for threats all night. Now you need basic things: warmth, water, food, a restroom, somewhere to sit without being forced out. If you're trying to keep a job or even apply for one, add these: a place to charge a phone, internet access, clean enough clothing to be treated seriously, time to make appointments, transportation that doesn't collapse when you're broke. This is what many housed people never see. Homelessness is not doing nothing. It's doing everything without tools. It's unpaid labor all day just to stay alive. Now add Alaska-specific realities. Wet clothing can become dangerous. If your socks get soaked and you can't dry them, your feet are at risk. If your sleeping bag gets wet, your night becomes colder. If your gloves are gone, your hands become vulnerable. And when you lose dexterity, when your fingers don't work well, everything gets harder. Opening containers, filling out forms, handling small objects, even tying a tent flap. This is why stories about frostbite in Alaska carry so much weight. Because frostbite isn't only a medical issue. It's a life issue. It can make it harder to work, harder to move, harder to stabilize, harder to recover. Now here's the part that breaks people quietly: sleep. When you can't sleep deeply, your mind changes. Your patience gets shorter. Your anxiety rises. Your decision-making suffers. Your ability to plan collapses. And then the public sees the result and says, "Why are they acting like that?" Often the answer is, because exhaustion has rewired them. Because living outside is loud even when it's silent. Because their nervous system doesn't get a chance to shut off. And when a human being can't shut off fear long enough to rest, they don't just feel tired. They start to feel unreal. That's how people describe it. I feel like I'm disappearing. So when you hear someone say, "I just need one place to rest," understand what they're really saying. I need the minimum conditions required to become myself again. Now we have to address something else, because in Alaska, who experiences homelessness is not random. And the reasons go deeper. Part 4: Native Communities, when history meets winter. You can't responsibly talk about homelessness in Alaska without talking about Alaska Native communities. Not as a stereotype, not as a political talking point, but as a fact of disproportionate impact. Alaska's own public health resources acknowledge major disparities affecting American Indian and Alaska Native communities across social conditions, including housing instability. And multiple reporting and community analyses describe Alaska Native people being disproportionately represented among people experiencing homelessness compared to their share of the general population. Here's how to discuss this correctly. This is not about blaming culture. This is not about claiming anyone chooses homelessness. This is about recognizing how historical trauma, structural barriers, and modern economic pressure concentrate risk. In many Alaska communities, especially rural and remote areas, the cost of living is high and logistics are hard. Food, fuel, and goods can be expensive. Jobs can be seasonal. Housing quality can be impacted by weather, infrastructure limits, and overcrowding. And when crisis hits, an injury, a family breakdown, a health issue, options can be limited. Sometimes the path people take is the same one thousands take across America. They move to a larger city to find work, services, medical care, or a fresh start. In Alaska, that larger city is often Anchorage. But Anchorage is not an easy place to land without support. The rental market can be tight. The entry-level wages may not match costs. And the social service system can be overloaded. So people arrive already under stress. And then the city's capacity determines whether they stabilize or spiral. Now add something many outsiders don't understand. For some people, the systems meant to help can feel culturally mismatched or hard to access. If you grew up in a community where trust was broken by institutions over generations, stepping into institutional settings can be difficult. If you've experienced discrimination, you may avoid places where you feel judged. If you've lost documents or don't have stable contact information, you may get blocked by paperwork. And that's how people become stuck outside, not because they didn't try, because the ladder has missing rungs. This is why solutions have to be broader than more enforcement or more beds. They have to include culturally informed services and prevention, especially for people relocating from rural communities. And while we're here, we need to mention another Alaska-specific force that interacts with homelessness: the land itself. Communities in Alaska face environmental changes, coastal erosion, permafrost impacts, and shifting subsistence conditions that can pressure housing and stability in ways most states don't experience. And when the ground shifts, literally or economically, families at the margins get hit first. Now, the moment we bring up homelessness, many viewers want to jump straight to one question: why doesn't the city just clear the camps? So let's talk about that carefully, factually, and with a focus on what actually works. Part 5, Policy Sweeps and the Move Along Trap. There's a harsh truth about homelessness policy in America. The fastest changes are usually the ones that look good from far away. A cleared sidewalk, a fenced-off area, a camp that disappears overnight. From a distance, it can feel like progress. But if the people don't have a real place to go, then clearing doesn't end homelessness. It relocates it. And in Alaska winter, relocation can increase risk, because being pushed farther from services can mean outreach teams can't find you consistently, medical issues go untreated longer, safety worsens when you're isolated, the chance of a fatal outcome rises. In 2024, the U.S. Supreme Court decision in City of Grants Pat v. Johnson significantly changed the legal landscape around enforcement against sleeping or camping in public spaces, allowing more local enforcement approaches. Now, let's be clear and responsible. Cities do have real obligations to protect public safety. Residents deserve sidewalks that are passable. Kids deserve safe routes to school. Businesses deserve not to be forced into becoming de facto crisis managers. Public workers deserve safe working conditions. And people experiencing homelessness deserve dignity and a real path back to housing. These truths are not enemies. The conflict starts when a city tries to solve a housing shortage with movement. Because movement is not housing. A sweep can remove tents from one location. But if the city does not have enough indoor capacity, the camp reappears somewhere else, often in a place that's colder, darker, and farther from help. And there's another trap hidden inside the move-along approach. It destroys the very things people need to stabilize. A sleeping bag, a blanket, a set of documents, medication, phone chargers, work boots, a winter coat. If those items are lost, that person doesn't just suffer inconvenience. They lose weeks or months of progress. In the municipal discussion of Anchorage homelessness response, capacity constraints and the challenges of managing unsheltered homelessness are central issues, including the need to connect people to services rather than only moving them. So what does policy look like when it's honest? It looks like admitting the real problem. If your community has more people needing indoor space than indoor space available, public space will become the overflow. And then the question becomes, do we manage overflow with punishment or with a pathway? Punishment can be fast. A pathway takes coordination, but only one of those approaches reduces homelessness long-term. Now let's talk about what actually works, because it's not magic, and it's not one program. It's a chain strong enough to hold people long enough to climb. Part 6, What Works in Alaska, a chain that can survive winter. If you want the truth about solving homelessness, here it is. There is no single silver bullet. There is a system of doors. And in Alaska, the doors must work in the coldest season, when the consequences are the highest. So what does a working chain look like? 1. Prevention first. Stop the fall before it becomes a rescue mission. The cheapest homelessness is the homelessness that never happens. That's not a slogan. That's math. Prevention looks like emergency rent assistance during a crisis month, mediation with landlords before eviction, utility support so heat stays on, short-term help that keeps a family housed while they recover. When you prevent one eviction in Alaska winter, you're not only preventing someone from sleeping outside, you're preventing a cascade: job loss, school disruption, health decline, trauma. Prevention is not handouts. It's damage control that protects the whole community. 2. Low-barrier indoor options, because survival comes before perfection. Some communities make the mistake of designing shelter systems that require stability before entry. But stability often comes after entry, especially for people who are sick, traumatized, or exhausted. Low-barrier options acknowledge the truth. If you want someone to stabilize, you have to get them inside first. That includes spaces that can accommodate people with pets, couples who want to stay together, people with trauma triggers in crowded environments, people who need storage for survival gear, people who can't meet strict curfews because of work schedules. This doesn't mean no rules. It means rules that don't block survival. Because in Alaska, blocking entry can mean freezing outside. 3. True navigation, case management that follows the person, not the building. A bed alone doesn't solve homelessness. A bed plus a plan can. The plan includes document replacement support, benefits navigation, medical linkage, behavioral health support, employment coaching, housing placement coordination. And here's the key: it has to be consistent. Same outreach workers, same relationships, same follow-up, because trust is built over time, and many people living outside have learned, through experience, that systems disappear. 4. Housing pathways. Shelter is the bridge, not the finish line. If you build a shelter system without housing exits, you build a waiting room, a revolving door, a place where people survive but don't recover. Permanent supportive housing, paired with services, can be essential for people with complex needs. Rapid rehousing can be effective for people who can stabilize quickly with short-term help. And deeply affordable housing is necessary for a labor market where wages don't match rent. If you want tent to disappear, you have to build exits, not just enforcement. 5. Culturally grounded solutions led with Alaska Native partnership. If a community is disproportionately harmed, solutions should include leadership and design from that community. That means tribal partnerships and service delivery, cultural competence as a baseline, not an extra, support for people relocating from rural villages to Anchorage, trauma-informed care that doesn't punish the symptoms of survival. Because if people don't feel safe inside the system, they will stay outside it. 6. Public space management with humanity, safety and dignity in the same sentence. This is where a lot of cities fail. They treat public space like a battlefield. A smarter approach treats it like a reality to be managed during capacity shortfalls. That includes hygiene resources, bathrooms, hand washing, trash pickup that doesn't destroy vital property, safe storage options, coordinated outreach with clear pathways indoors, de-escalation response instead of only policing. You can enforce public order while still building exits, but enforcement without exits is just displacement. And displacement in Alaska winter can be deadly. 7. The real measure: fewer people outside, not fewer people visible. If a policy reduces homelessness only because it pushes people into darker corners, that isn't success. Success is fewer people unsheltered because they're inside, stably. And we already know unsheltered homelessness is a critical indicator. Statewide data shows Alaska had a large unsheltered population in official counts. Anchorage documented unsheltered counts that demand urgent attention. This is the line that matters. Not, how clean does the sidewalk look today? But, how many people have a door tonight? Now let's end where we began, at night, because this story doesn't pause when the video ends. Outro: Alaska is not far away. It's a test of who we are. When this episode ends, Anchorage will still be cold. A person in a car will still be measuring fuel like it's time. Someone will still be wondering if they can walk to a warming option without their toes going numb. Someone will still be hoping a lobby stays open, because a chair indoors beats a sleeping bag in snow. And here's the point I want to leave you with. Alaska is not just a different kind of state. It's a magnifying glass. Because when a country can't protect people from the coldest consequences of poverty in its coldest places, it reveals the truth about the whole system. And if you're thinking, what can I do? Let's keep it real and practical, not performative. Well, you can do that actually helps. Support credible local organizations in Anchorage and across Alaska that provide outreach, warming options, shelter operations, domestic violence support, and housing navigation. Use official city or state resource lists when possible. Donate essentials through organizations, not random drop-offs. The best donations in Alaska winter often include socks, gloves, thermal layers, hand warmers, and hygiene supplies, distributed through teams who know where and how to deliver safely. Learn the local hotline or resource directory in your area. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is connect someone to help quickly, without guessing. Advocate for solutions that reduce unsheltered homelessness, not just move it. Ask leaders about winter capacity, housing exits, prevention funding, culturally grounded service design, long-term supportive housing, refuse dehumanization. The way we speak becomes the way we vote. The way we vote becomes the way we build. And the way we build determines who survives winter. Now I want to hear from you, respectfully. Where are you watching from? And what do you think matters most in a place like Alaska? More winter beds, stronger prevention, more permanent supportive housing, or better rural to urban support, so people don't fall through gaps when they relocate. Keep it human. Keep it constructive. This is U.S. Homeless Secrets. Thank you for watching. And remember, somewhere tonight, under the same sky you're sleeping beneath, someone is trying to stay alive until morning.